the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We will start our county board meeting with public comment. We have 2 minutes for every speaker or any speaker that wants to approach the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record. And you have 2 minutes to address us about anything in particular. So public comment is now open. Just a second. I had a gentleman and he was here and he just what? Oh, okay. Is he coming back in?
Yes.
Okay, Wayne, he specifically wanted to address us, so I don't want to pass over. Find him in the hallway. Tell him we're waiting. We'll wait. Yeah, all by himself. Good morning.
Morning. You just pass this around, so you got a visual. It's not drawn to scale, but I just want to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about here.
And Wayne, we need you to state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wayne Wicca. I am a resident of the Winona community, not too far away from here, the gateway to Winona. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Corps of Engineers, not the rank and file of the people that work for the Corps of Engineers are outstanding people. Got to know them, but the upper echelon, the ones that are making the decision as it impacts the residents of the community in our county, are asking us to accept a win-lose proposal. More or less what they're trying to say to us is, we don't care about you as a community, we don't care about being a good neighbor. What I just showed you is what they're looking to do to our community. It's called devastation, it's called pillaging, it's destroying the community forevermore. I've been in consultation with the upper echelon, Colonel Jansen, and Colonel Jansen's from the Twin Cities. I asked him, I talked to him this weekend. I said, who's making this decision as it impacts our lives? I said, is it you? He says, yes. And he said, my boss, Major General Toy in Vicksburg, Mississippi. They need to come up here. They need to actually see what they're actually planning to do to our community. Everything that you look at from County Road 15, looking east towards La Crosse, will be gone forevermore. They're proposing, if you go online, it's a 50-foot wall of sand that's going to impact our community forever. If you look also out there, they're going to talk about the socioeconomic impact to the citizens. They said that there's two sentences, something to the effect, the neighbors are a little concerned about the pile, and then they have a plan to actually remedy it, and that's to put some trees up. 50 years from now, that is not a win-win situation for us. We're talking about economic devastation, social devastation, health issues when it comes to sand blowing off the pile with all the dust. We need some help with this. We need to get out in front of it. I'm asking you, we started a petition with the people of Homer. We've got about 50 people that have signed it at this point. After just 3 hours, mind you, I've been out in the community 3 hours, 50 people approximately have signed it for the people that were home. But we need help with this. I'm going to actually share with you, I'll make some copies. We can get a win-win here. We can do what Wabasha did 30 miles up the road. They stopped the Corps of Engineers. They found a better solution that did not impact and destroy our county forevermore. So we're asking you to help us in this as our elected officials. We've got work to do. They declared war on us. We need a response. We need to care about our community, our county, and we can get this done. We have a March 6th deadline that has to be inputted into their site, their proposal. Now, they snuck up on us and they didn't tell us about what they were doing. So they had the meeting under the cover of darkness pretty much. I don't know how many of you were even aware of it. So we're asking you to say, hey, listen, their current proposal is a non-starter for Winona County. That's what we're asking first and foremost. Their proposal is a non-starter. We need some dialogue. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. We offer them a win-win solution. Bob Hamper, who owned the property across from us, had a pile at one time when we bought the property in 2009. It was only about 15 feet high. And Bob eventually said, we're not going to put any more sand there. He actually bowed to the people of the community. Sand was gone for 2 years. Bob died.
I need you to
Wrap
it up,
Okay,
please.
Yep. Bob died, and what happened is the Corps snuck in, bought the property without any consultation from the community or the residents. Now what they're seeking to do is expand to triple the size of the pile and bring ruin to our community and to our county. We need a statement from you. We need your help. We need to put some political pressure on them, legal pressure on them. We need to use our resources, and we're asking you to be the first step in that right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? All right, if not, seeing nobody come forward, we'll move on in our agenda. Item 3, approval of the county board meeting minutes from February 11th, 2020, and the closed session, February 11th, 2020.
Move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the meeting minutes for those two board meetings. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Consent, comments, and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz?
I have nothing to change.
Commissioner Fidesi?
I just have an announcement.
Announcement? Commissioner Meyer? Commissioner Olson?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Attorney Sondland? Pat? Heidi, do you have anything for us? We are reminded, everybody at the table, not to play with the microphones because it messes up Heidi's recording, and we want accurate recording. So that is a request from Heidi. And I do have an action related to the sand issue that we can discuss at the very end. So with that, I would ask a motion.
Approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. Mr. Fritz, if you'd read the consent business into the record, please.
Department recommendations, 5.1, approve professional services agreement for professional consultation and reflective practice supervision services. 5.2, approve renewal of grant agreement with volunteer services. 5.3, approve monthly resolution. 5.4, approve renewal of grant agreement with SEMCAC. 5.5, approve lease agreement for Trimble S7 total station survey equipment. 5.6, approve 2020 solid waste handler and facility license applications. 5.7, authorize disposal of excess equipment. 5.8, confirm payment of disbursements.
Approve the consent agenda as read.
Motion by Commissioner Kavesi, or Jacob, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the consent business as read. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. All right. Just a quick comment. Volunteer services, I think they've resolved the problem. They had an issue a month ago or so. They weren't taking the clothing store. They weren't taking any more clothing articles because they needed to find a source to remove the articles that weren't sold. And, you know, we're all into recycling, but there's even a problem of that. But I think they resolved that issue. They are taking clothing donations again. And they do a great justice to the community. Thank you, Volunteer Services. All right, moving on. General business. Item 6.1, conduct a public hearing on the conditional use permit request for Darwin and Susan Denzer and Novell Energy LLC. It starts at page 64 of our agenda. And maybe Commissioner Jacob, you could, the Planning Commission, there was discussion at the Planning Commission why the county board was doing this here and now, and maybe you could just reiterate why we're doing it here and now.
I guess the planning commission had concerns that maybe that their recommendation wasn't being heard. Um, I don't feel like that was the case because at our last county board meeting, we didn't vote on it. We decided that the application had significant changes from what the planning commission saw. The footprint of the actual solar array was much smaller and it was farther from the affected residences. So county board just decided that rather than send it back to the planning commission and have them go through the work again, and the time that that would take to notice a public hearing there and then again get back on this board, it would be more efficient to put it on this agenda, which is where we're at. So I guess with that, I'd move to open the public hearing on the issue.
Second.
Okay, we have a
Madam Chair.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Could we just orient the county board to some of the newer exhibits prior to the opening of the public hearing in the same format that we typically do at the planning commission? We have
Is the-
those couple of slides that
Sure.
as asked for by
Is the-
county administration.
Is the motioner okay with that?
We haven't voted on the motion, so that's fine.
Okay, all right. Please,
You're in the
new,
driver's seat.
new information would be good, because it has changed, things did get changed.
Additional information is sometimes available, and the night of the planning commission meeting, the last meeting, additional information was brought forth by the petitioners, which is at all of your places, because it didn't make the deadline. Just in terms of facilitation of the public hearing, the tornado lot 9-acre site, this is the slopes of 12 to 18% is the overall parcel, which is much larger than 99-acre parcel, of which 9 acres of community solar garden is what the applicant has applied for. That has not changed. This is the approximate location on 248 in Denzer Road. This is a new exhibit, and it may be duplicated in your packet. This is just a draft of a landscape plan showing screening that would be more cost-effective and more reflective of what the Planning Commission has consistently approved in the past. This is something that one of the petitioners came in, talked about, and then subsequently Ms. Fitzgerald from Novell produced this. This has not been fully reviewed by staff or anything. This is just to show that there has been an effort by the petitioners to provide additional exhibits and additional information, and it shows the array as well. This is backing out just a little bit further. Also, they have met with neighbors, and that's part of your packet as well, and have discussed providing additional screening for close neighbors. So there have been some due diligence on their behalf toward being neighbors. The array location on the flattest part of the sloping ground is right here. And this is a video just showing the site, which this is all stuff that the Planning Commission saw, with the exception of those things I itemized as new exhibits.
Can you go back to the parcel? Okay, so the green line is what the planning commission originally saw. And to the planning commission's thought process, there was going to be solar array on the entire area of the, that's encircled in green. What the county board saw is that the actual layout of the solar arrays is further to the east and not very much on those, where you can see are those 10-foot slope intervals on there?
I believe so.
Yeah, so the solar array, as the planning commission was discussing it, we thought that the array was going to be all the way up on that hog's back or those sloped areas. But when it came before the county board, you can see right there, you can see the edge of those slope arrays. It does not cover the entire area that's outlined in green. So that was a significant change, and it moves the arrays significantly farther away from the residences that are to the southwest.
To Commissioner Jacobs' point, the night of the Planning Commission, a new exhibit was received by staff. Staff is always torn because the staff report that's produced for the decision makers of the Planning Commission is a point in time. At some point, we receive the materials prior to a deadline for material submittal, and then things can trickle in thereafter, again, people doing their due diligence. But it also speaks to, how hard should that deadline be? At the time that the staff report was written, the Rolling Stone Township acknowledgement form had not been received by staff. We can say, look, unless you have all of these exhibits, which sometimes can slow projects down, every single I dotted, we're not taking your application. We've tried to err on the side of the application is substantially completed, and something like the township acknowledgement form, maybe they couldn't get it in before the deadline for the planning commission, and they will get it in, and they did get it in. The township did not approve, but and that, that could have weighed in with the planning commission as well. But the fact of the matter is, since that time, multiple new exhibits have come forth that clarified that exact point that Commissioner Jacob made. So that's maybe a little clearer version of it. So that's all I have, unless there's a question for staff. I just wanted to put that up on the screen.
I have a question. If you look at the graphics, starting from closest to State Highway 248, that row is trees, and they go around the corner, and then the next row is the chain link fence, and then the slashed part is pollinator plants. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. It's a little small on the diagram, but I got it, yeah.
Right. Because these are movable arrays to capture maximum sunlight, and the petitioner can speak to that later. They've made a preliminary recommendation of shorter varieties of native wildflowers that would be considered pollinators. What staff does is we compare Bowser's and DNR's pollinator checklists, which have been prepared for solar development, against what is submitted. And generally that's before the development certificate is issued, but they've done this in advance to try to show that they've been talking to neighbors and that they've also been doing some of their homework as far as providing this information, so that's why it's new.
But this is an updated landscape plan.
Yes,
Yes.
this has been updated. Was presented a preliminary one, and then they updated it after talking to neighbors and staff. And it likely would be tweaked again, but just minor fine-tuning kind of thing, I believe. Anyone else for staff? Otherwise, we're available.
Questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. We have a motion to open the public hearing. All those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Do you want a second?
Oh,
I
aye.
sec- I
Yeah,
second.
we had a
Okay,
second.
thanks, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, we had a second. Did I hear ayes?
Yeah,
Aye.
aye.
Okay, nay. Okay, we have the public hearing open. We have 2 people signed up, and more can speak if they would like to. Paula Fitzgerald? And Paula, remind you, name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Paula Fitzgerald, Novel Energy Solutions, 2303 Wycliffe Street, St. Paul. So the project was submitted under the old ordinance, but also meets the requirements of the current ordinance. Staff realized all the requirements of the ordinance were met and recommended the Planning Commission consider the approval criteria of the ordinance. The approval that they said, the criteria, came with 15 conditions of approval. One being for stray voltage, where we were required to test prior to construction, at the time of commissioning, and then a year following. And then, just coincidentally, there were recently 2 CSG projects in Carver County that were denied for stray voltage and property values. Those were both overturned by the appellate court, saying they were unfounded. But obviously, as the Kahlers, the founders of our company, are cattle farmers, this stray voltage is important to us, so we are totally fine with doing that condition. So, as you can see from the history, there was some confusion at the Planning Commission level, and clarifying information has submitted, which you've seen here, which you've got in front of you, Planning Commission has, and the township has. Novel and the Denzers have worked hard with all the neighbors to mitigate any concerns, and the Denzers have obtained signatures from multiple neighbors. The only real neighbor that'll really be able to see the site is the Reeds. Their concerns have been mitigated with the updated landscaping plan and a condition that we are requesting be added that states that prior to the completion of construction and with landowner cooperation, that Novel Energy Solutions will purchase and install a row of trees and bushes for the landowner's preference on the west side of their driveway. Project meets all the requirements of the ordinance. Findings can be easily made. We hereby are respectfully requesting County Board approve the Denzer CSG project with the 15 conditions of approval proposed by staff, in addition to the requested one for a row of trees, bushes on the Reed's property. We just want that for their comfort and everybody's comfort. Obviously, we said we're gonna do it, but if a condition's in place, it puts it more on the books, so to speak. So as you guys are aware, there's obviously an old adage that says you have two choices with property. You either own it or zone it. Winona County has zoned it accordingly. Our project meets all the requirements. The Denzers own it, and they're choosing to use a portion of it for a community solar garden. This is in accordance with the ordinance and exercising their landowner rights. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm available for any questions. Yes. So the Reed property is actually across the street,
Okay.
and they're really the only ones that can view it. So, one member of our team went and met with them, and, you know, they were sitting in the house talking about it
It's here.
and looking out the window, and they've got, you know, a row of trees on one side of their driveway, but not the other, and we're like, well, we could plant those trees and bushes on the opposite side of your driveway, so it would provide screening, etc. And they were, you know, they were happy with that and felt that their concerns had been listened to, and we were doing what we could to try to accommodate.
Okay, I see it on the map, and there is a setback from the highway on both sides, actually. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Jacob?
So generally, during the public hearing, we don't interact with the public. This is the applicant, and they're usually given a chance to speak. So if I have questions for the applicant, would I do that now, or do I do that after the public hearing? Or
You're really supposed to take the public
Comment.
input,
Okay.
close the public
Hearing,
hearing,
and
then
then-
have a board discussion.
Okay.
And then we
Pardon
can.
me.
And then you can
and
ask
we
the
can
petitioner
address.
questions.
I
Gotcha.
may ask you to come back up then.
Sounds good. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. All right. We're trying to be customer friendly.
No.
Mina Kaler. So as a member of the public, I see on my note here, I will restrict you to 2 minutes. Start the clock. If we got to follow the rules.
I know.
I'm sorry.
That's what it works.
So, hello, I'm Nina Kaler, 23913 County Road 39, St. Charles. And I am one of the founding members of Novel, which is this project here. We're working with the Denzers. So we do respectfully ask you to approve this project today. As with all the other solar projects that have been approved, we have met and all the conditions, as was stated by the planning department. We have also gone above and beyond, which is what Paula has stated. In the agenda, I do want to clarify to people reading that, in the agenda, we looked at the recommendation of the county board was to discuss and deny the project, but upon talking to the county department, or the planning department, they said that that's just a carryover from the commissioners, the planning commission. And I want to make sure that people are aware of that. They said that's not their recommendation. So all parties, and it's been mentioned, and the county person did say that the Township Planning Commission and everyone here does have all of this information. And I do appreciate the way that you guys are bringing this forward, that you brought it and said we're gonna try to get this handled, because this spring is coming and the landowner does have a right to know what's going on with his land. We are working with all of the parties. We do want to be good neighbors. This is our county, this is our community. So I guess we're hoping that this is approved today. We're respectfully asking that. Our landowner has been notified that if you guys don't approve this today, it will be carried to another meeting. But we're just hoping that that doesn't happen, as I stated, with the spring and with meetings and drawing it out, because you guys do have the information. And as we stated at the start, just like all the other approved solar arrays, we have met all the conditions that are laid out by the county. And we are going above and beyond that. So we do appreciate you guys looking at this and investigating and finding, and approving this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board about this application? Please step forward, name and address for the record, please.
My name is Doug Cronbush. I live at 25564 Stewart Valley Drive. Lived back there since 2001. Neighbor to the Denzers. Bought the land from the Denzers. I just like to state that I'm for it. The reason I'm for it is when we're under peak energy alert, we don't realize until back in 2006, and when I was in the petroleum industry for 10 years. When we go into that, we run jet turbine engines out at Dexter, and we do it down at XL Energy and all over. We're burning about 8,000 gallons of diesel fuel an hour. So when the sun's out and stuff like that, all these solar gardens, I feel if they're put in properly, and this one's gonna be in a nice location, I think it's gonna really help if it's on my behalf. Thank you guys for your time. Hopefully it's good info.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board about this petition?
Jeff Firstenow, 4228 West 9th Street in City of Goodview. I wanted to address some of the issues that seem to come up about solar gardens, not necessarily this particular one, but I've done a little research on the issue of property values. It seems to always come up the discussion that solar garden is going to drop the property value of neighboring properties. So I got online and I found a study that was done nationwide, and I printed this out so I could leave it with you guys. But in here, about the middle of this article, they have determined 63% of the respondents said there was little to no change in property values. 11% said there were maybe even an increase in property values. And I have another report that's basically saying the same thing. This was done here in Minnesota, Illinois, and Indiana, and all the studies say the same thing, that there is little to no change in property value, if anything, an increase. And then I also have another report here that is from Chisago County here in Minnesota, where they had a 100 megawatt site, so much larger site. So I would think that if there's going to be an impact, it would be from that large one, because obviously there's more solar panels you're going to be looking at. And Chisago County Board also determined there was little to no effect on property values. So this is information I'd like to be entered into the county, so that in future, as people are discussing, how this affects property values, we already have studies that have been done and say there is little to no effect. Another item I'd like to discuss, it looks like I'm about out of time. Stray voltage. I work for Brago Solar. We have to test for stray voltage before and after. We did a site up by Altura on Highway, 114. Our stray voltage test at the end was actually lower than when we started.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yes, you can
Thank
do
you.
it there. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Last time, anyone else wishing to address in the public comments?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Olson to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No? Okay, the public hearing portion is closed. Now, if anybody has questions, Ms. Qualley, you have some additional?
Madam Chair, just one clarifying statement. The planning department is not in the business of making recommendations between the planning commission and the county board on projects. Planning commission recommends, and the county board then makes their own decision. If we can provide additional information to the county board in the decision-making process, we're happy to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And to be, for a point of clarification, I think it's been referenced the 15 conditions. So the 15 conditions that we're considering, does that start on page 82 and continue 83 and onto the 84? Are those the 15 conditions? Because there's multiple, maybe staff can clarify. Have I got the right list?
I think they're thinking about it.
Unfortunately, my page numbers are cut off.
Oh, okay.
But it started with 655 on your left-hand column.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes. Yeah, the numbers on the side, okay.
Correct.
All right, and it continues through 703?
703, correct. And the
Okay.
petitioner requested one additional condition.
And that was
The trees.
the extra tree, the increase in tree,
Trees
or the
outside.
landscaping?
Correct. If, Madam Chair, if you
Yes.
want a copy of that, I have an extra copy.
Okay, so that would be 16 that we're considering? 16, the 16th condition?
Correct.
Okay.
I think that might be in what I copied for you, but in the event, that way you have it.
Okay, so everybody knows a requested conditional of approval. Prior to completion of construction and with the landowner cooperation, Novell Energy Systems will purchase and install a row of trees and/or bushes per the landowner's preference on the west side of Reed's driveway, similar to those on the east side of the driveway. Okay, so that would be the 16th condition. Okay, discussion.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner
I
Meyer.
know the public hearing is closed. Are the Reeds
Yes.
here?
I don't think so.
No?
Anybody representing the Reed family? No.
Just interested to know what
I didn't think
their
so.
take on it.
Sure. Okay. Discussion by the county board. What's the willing?
Sure,
Commissioner
I'll
Jacob?
I'll speak to a couple issues. At the planning commission level, when we had the discussion, the vote was 5-3, voting with 5 to deny. Before I came to the last county board meeting, I did have a discussion with planning commission member Mike Flynn. I think I stated this at the last county board level, or at the last county board meeting. And Mike's concern was, he voted to deny. But his concern was that the arrays that were kind of up on the hill area, it's largely a flat site, but there's kind of a hill area. And the way the planning commission saw the solar arrays on the full site, it looked as though there would be some panels up pretty high. And he said that was his single concern, and that if those were pulled down into the flat area, that he would have supported the petition rather than deny it. And in that case, it would have been a 4-4 vote to deny, which would have failed for a lack of majority to deny the petition. So I think it wasn't a unanimous vote to deny. My position was I supported the petition then, and I feel like the planning commission wants me to support their position of denying, but I supported the position then. I can't see changing my position to not support it at this point. I did receive a call from Farm Bureau, president of Farm Bureau. They said they had a discussion on the issue and that they're strong on property rights. They feel that this is a property right, and that if we start picking applications to deny, the same thought process could be applied to, say, swine facility. I don't like the way it looks or smells, so I'm going to vote to deny it. I don't like the dairy facility, the way it looks or smells, so I'm going to vote to deny it. So their position was that they wanted to see the county board approve the petition. I'd also note that we've got multiple other arrays very close in this vicinity, one practically across the road on 248 Dingfelters, and that was approved. So I feel like if we deny, we're singling one petition out and treating it differently than kind of the population as a whole, and I don't really feel good about that. I also did invite planning commission members. I see one planning commission member here for sure, that we were holding public hearing today. If they had concerns, that they still had an opportunity to interact and discuss this. I didn't see anyone come from the planning commission to state their position on the petition. And maybe one last piece that I feel is significant. I know the Maish array that we approved that was not much more than a year ago, has already turned over to a new ownership. The Novell projects, I feel it's a local company. It's not being bought and sold from, develop it and sell it. It seems like they're in the community to do business in the community, and that feels good to support that. So
Okay.
I'm going to support the petition.
Anybody else have? A couple of things, if I can. On condition 9, this was dealing with the stray voltage, and we know there's a lot unknown. I appreciate the gentleman that provided some information. There's unknowns and such. Sounds like we need to hold Xcel Energy to higher standards on their stray voltage, because I've heard that statement several times, that once a project goes in, it's quote better. There was a specific test though that was required. It had some initials. Ms. Qualley,
NEV.
I think we need to specify, because we need a credible test for the neighbors, and it seemed like that was one that was highly recommended.
In the planning department, Carrie Clem from Xcel Energy, within the last 24 months, has emailed the department about concerns about neutral to earth voltage, commonly referred to as stray voltage, in solar gardens. They have stated that a solar garden is not inherently any more or less likely to develop NEV issues than any other customer in all cases, though Xcel Energy is responsible for the equipment Xcel Energy owns and operates. The solar developer is responsible for the equipment they own and operate, and dairy farms and other utilities are responsible for their systems and any potential issues or impacts arising from them now or in the future. If issues arise, the parties need to work together to identify the cause, and whoever owns the equipment causing the issue will be accountable for the remedy. Baseline or regular testing for stray voltage, NEV, for the solar garden would be between the individuals in question that are determined in the conditions that the county board would vote upon. I'm inserting that comment, and the solar garden company. If evidence of an issue arises in the future, Xcel Energy would work with other parties to investigate, but would not be accountable for fixing the issue unless it is determined to be caused by our equipment. I also reached out to Ms. Clem to see if there was any update to this information and guidance from them, or from Xcel, or from her, and I left her a voice message as well. But that's what I have on file at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so I think members of the Planning Commission wanted to have that particular test,
Madam Chair?
and to have a standard of testing.
Yeah. I think it isn't clear, and when I was trying to research it afterwards, kind of to what Ms. Qualley said, it is not clear to me how that NEV test is different than the other stray voltage testing. So at that meeting, of course, the Planning Commission did talk about wanting to have further training, because I think there is stuff that gets said that I think isn't necessarily based in fact. It's kind of hearsay stuff about stray voltage. Not that it's not a valid concern, and not that we shouldn't. I feel a little uncomfortable changing this wording today without having done some more due diligence, really, for educational, for all of us, for the Planning Commission, for our Planning Environmental Services Department. Because they said that the NEV test, it looks to me like it's the same as stray voltage, so I don't understand how it's different than what we've asked for. And they said at that meeting, Ms. Clark said at that meeting, she was in the audience, the one who spoke, that it only had to be done at the site and not at the abutting properties. See,
Mr. Jacob.
My understanding of what's somewhat different about the NEV testing is that it's done, in this case, I guess it would be Xcel, is the power company that provides power there.
Right.
Where when you get individual stray voltage tests, it's a little bit like a person in a court case finding a lawyer. They'll get the lawyer that says whatever they want them to say. And if they're responsible for getting their own stray voltage testing, they can find whatever company is going to give them the results that they're after. So her position was the power company has better equipment and has a kind of official standard and is the one that should be used at the site.
yeah, and I agree, she did kind of say those two things. One, she wanted Xcel to do the testing, not just some company, whoever the solar developer decided. But she also did assert that it was a separate test, and that I'm not so sure about.
I guess I would agree with Commissioner Meyer that to backtrack to that conversation, it was not had at the planning commission level for this application.
No.
That is absolutely right.
But going forward,
Yeah.
the applications we did the other night, we applied it to all of them equally.
Right.
So
Yes.
I feel like that's a standard that we can feel consistent about going forward, but for us to backtrack to one that before the conversation was had, that seems the applicants really haven't, I guess that you could ask them if they want to do that or not, but they haven't agreed to any of that. We'd be
Yeah.
adding it in after the fact.
But that's part of our role too. I mean, and again, I think the whole gist of this is we want, as you iterated and we want a standard. We want everybody to be treated and have uniform language. So we have projects that are on the Xcel Energy lines. We have projects that are coming through the My Energy system. So there again, we're going to have to determine what those, are they going to use Xcel? I'm
No,
not sure.
no. The big difference has to do with the law that
Governs.
is behind it.
Right.
So Xcel Energy is required to work with independent developers to do community solar gardens, and there's a whole set of rules. The My Energy project, it's under My Energy, will probably own it.
I've talked to them, they're through Dearland Power, and they can have like 10% on their renewables, and yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a
so
little
that's
more.
yeah, so it's very different in that it's not an independent developer. My Energy, and they're a member, they're G&T, their generator.
Dearland.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
they're.
And then you're going into Wisconsin.
And they're all
stuff.
in the utility industry as opposed to being
Right.
independent.
And it's all gonna change as soon as the government subsidies disappear. We know that, it'll all change.
So,
Okay.
but yeah, it is different
Right.
regulations, so.
So we can ask the app, and here's another issue I have with this whole process, because this is new, okay? So usually a conditional use permit is, I was taught and trained, goes with the land, the landowner. The landowner isn't even here to, speak. We're
They've got
dealing.
representation.
Right, but we're dealing with developers, and so I looked at legal. We put both, Karen, we put both names on a lot of these applications, but ultimately, don't we hold the landowner responsible? Is our clout with the developer? Because as Commissioner Jacob said, and I can see this happening, these solar gardens are gonna be sold down the road, not necessarily this app, I'm talking in general. These small little ones are gonna be bought and sold across the country. And so if that company's gone, a new company, is the,
If they transferred ownership, you mean of the system?
yeah, well, right, and so we put their name in the application too, but that can change, and what ground do we have to deal with them versus the landowner this is land use, this is a conditional use permit.
Right,
So I
and
think
it
it's something we
depends on
need
with the land.
to review where we're going with all this stuff. We got all these little companies coming in, wanting to do business, which is a good thing,
I
but then
think
again,
we're
if they're
gonna have to follow
gone,
Ordinance, maybe Ms. Qualley.
If
is
they're
vice
gone-
president, so it's-
Couple quick things. To your point, Madam Chair, staff has had challenging time trying to keep tabs. This is not reflective of a local developer, of course, but these projects are sought out by developers. They may not be the installer, they may not be the operations manager, and they may not be the maintenance company that's taking care of those evergreens.
right,
So, what are the conditions, and if, Heidi, if you could assist me for just a minute. This is a hard copy of the findings of facts that the planning commission saw. That way you don't have to use the ones in the packet. You can see these directly. But we have requested that any name changes or any projects that are bought and sold, that within 30 days, the planning department in Winona County is contacted so we can update the database, so we know who we're talking with. And that way, if there's an issue, somebody calls in, complains about something, we know who to contact. And obviously, the property owner, is also a part of the equation, but that definitely will help staff if that remains a condition. Thank you.
Pardon me. Oh, so that is condition 14, right?
Correct.
That is
Yes,
what you're saying,
right.
okay.
But I guess my concern is from a legal standpoint, if something doesn't go right, who do we have recourse with? Ultimately, the landowner?
Well, I mean, with these kind of projects, do we have a 25-year
We have escrow.
There's the bond, but there's also, my understanding of the way this works is the landowner, it runs with the land. We would have the recourse with the landowner, but they would have a contract with any of these companies so that if we went for them, they would be able to go back on those companies as well.
Right, it sounds like a, it sounds like a complicated, like our world is,
It runs with the landowner.
with the landowner, okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, we try and make it complicated, all right. Any other discussion on the 16 conditions?
I'll make a motion to approve with the addition of condition 16 as submitted by the petitioner.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion made to approve the application with the 16 total conditions for the Denzer project. Any further discussion? Just a sidelight, always do a little homework. We're kind of getting capped out. According to the Excel and then My Energy, you know, we got inundated by these, and maybe, you know, we're learning as we're going. I think we're pretty much tapped out as far as capacity according to the Excel energy maps and the My Energy agreement, but I don't want staff not to refine our process and look at how we can make these types of applications, you know, standard and improved. But I do see a lot of capacity right here where we're sitting, the city of Winona. There's a lot of capacity within the city of Winona. So I would encourage the city of Winona to look at doing some solar projects. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
aye.
Opposed, nay. Approved. And I can share, I know I asked staff for a map, and I did get a link with a relatively new map of the areas that are available. I can share that with staff, because what Lou had was an older map. All right, moving on. 6.3, receive update on delay payment to Minnesota Department of Human Services. I think Karen's with us. The check's not in the mail?
The check is not in the mail.
Good.
Good morning, Madam Commissioner.
Good morning.
I just wanted to provide an update that we did receive communication from the Minnesota Department of Human Services with a new billing that they are proceeding forward with, billing us and doing all the active work as if they are going to continue to try and recoup these funds from 2014 to halfway through 2019 for the substance use disorder treatment while a patient is in an institute of mental disease. So we continue on with this. The good news is that they recalculated our bill and it went from 77,000 down to 72,000. So I'm asking for another recalculation to maybe get it down another 5,000. I actually ended up having a conversation with Governor Walz. We were at a meeting together and met him, and then I did talk to him about this SUDIMD billing that we are having. He stands by that he is not going to have counties repay and that he wants to establish a hold harmless fund. I've been watching the activities going on at the legislative session, and there's no new bills that have been introduced that this hold harmless fund would has come about yet. We have phone conferences every Friday at 1:30 from 1:30 to 2:30 with our MAX organization. And we keep stating that we need to come up and have somebody author this language. Craig Meyer from Des Moines Valley, he is also director, and we keep stating that we also need to either have a separate set of legislation that states that the state Department of Human Services can only go back a year if they find billing errors. So we're continuing to work on that. I'm heading up this afternoon for our MAX meetings this week, so hopefully we will be able to get some of this moving forward. So.
Good. Commissioner Kavesi.
So this is the one fund that we have been billed on. Weren't there were two funds. Do we have any update on the second fund? As I remember it, the second bill was significantly higher than the 72,000.
It's the 40, the institutional background checks.
Oh, yes, the institutional background checks. We are still, so our large congregate care, our residential treatment facilities for children, they have
that we're still waiting for all of those background checks to be completed. There's a few facilities that have come into compliance, but none that our children are placed in. So we continue to lose our 4E Title 4E funding for those facilities until they can come into compliance. So
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not a refund, it's actual, we can't claim the money while they're in
okay.
an unlicensed or unbackground checked facility.
yes. And so they had put the onus of getting those facilities background checked on the counties, and we're like, we don't license them, that is a license requirement of the state. So they are now in the process of working through that. They're hoping to have everybody up and running by April 1st, but I don't hold out that that is gonna happen.
Is your group somebody writing legislation? My experience with legislators is they like to be handed the verbiage and everything to make, so do we have somebody working on something?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
actually, for the child welfare,
Yes.
which is part of this, I'm actually a topic lead, and so I am part of bringing up these different topics within our work groups. And so hopefully this will have one. We've talked about having some written legislation that states that the state, because this is a state error,
Yes.
that they should reimburse us for our losses.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to go through, but we can always ask.
Right, but
Yes.
we've got some tight deadlines this year, and I'm sure you're well aware of that. Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we need it, and we need it now, and of course, some of us are attending the AMC Ledge Conference tomorrow and Thursday, and we could reiterate that to our local representatives. Be ready for it and support us.
Yeah, or even asking to have someone offer it would be awesome, or if we can get some contact.
We can do that.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. Any
All
other
right.
questions? Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you. 6.4, discuss process for adding future agenda items. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, well, I asked to have this on the agenda, I guess, after Commissioner Meyer asked for a presentation from the SWCD on cover crops. And I felt as though it should have come to the full county board to see whether we wanted that presentation. The way it went was Commissioner Meyer said she wanted it, it was seconded, and it moved forward on the agenda. So, you know, I thought a number of things probably needed to be discussed. How long of a presentation, who would present, how would we invite the people, or invite the SWCD, so it wasn't like they're being directed by the county board to do something. I mean, they don't work for us. So I guess I just want to make sure that there's not, I guess I'll say, a double standard. If I decide that I want to have a presentation from the Plainview Vet Clinic on the analysis of the dairy census, and Marcia seconds it, then does it go straight to the Plainview Vet Clinic and say, get on down here and give us a presentation on what Steve Jacob wants to see? So I'm wondering if we need to have this discussed and a policy in place, or are we satisfied with the way things are? And if so, I think the next meeting, there's a few things that I want to have presentations on.
Right.
Would you change the current policy? Or how would you change it?
Well, I'm not sure that there is a current policy, and I'm also, well, I've discussed, if you want to leave it the way it is, I'm okay with that, but you're going to get controversial stuff that maybe the full board doesn't want to see.
And just to that, so the way we currently do it is two people can request it. But to get anything done at the county board, we need 3 votes. So I mean, there's kind of a, Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, so page 4 of our packet, these are our policies, right?
Yep.
I think probably 2 and 3 are the ones that you're talking about. And so, I mean, part of what you're saying is there. I think the question is, and I don't think the answer to it is, okay, so the agenda items should be limited to legislative actions, quasi-judicial decisions, policy discussions, or informational presentations or reports. So I think that reports I think they do follow in there. The important part, which I think Commissioner Ward kind of addressed, and it matters especially if you're in the minority of some kind of a point, is that your voice does not have to be silenced.
Right.
It takes two.
Yeah, if you have two, even if you're in the minority, your voice is not going to be silenced. And I see the power of that. You're right in terms of item 2 here does say you have to have support by a second commissioner. You have to provide a specific agenda item description and indicate whether it's going to be general or committee of the board is really a working session, right?
Well,
Yeah, that's the working session.
working, I think one of the things like, if we bring in information, do we want the public to, to maybe have a little bit more, up what's going on, what's going to be talked about, and maybe even be able to partake?
And then specify the date of the future agenda. So I certainly didn't do all of the items that are in there.
But,
That is very true.
yeah, the description of the, when you add a description of the agenda item, that's what's printed in our packet.
We're getting a lot of feedback.
I
on
know.
this slide.
Working on it.
We all are,
It's
though.
my cold, no.
Got it.
So I mean, I think currently we are following the policies on page 4, because when we ask to add an item to the agenda, we don't have extensive discussion. We just agree to add that item, and both of those meetings are public meetings. The committee of the board is a public meeting, or the county board. So there is public input at that level. We don't always specify the date of the future agenda. Sometimes we leave that open to whatever.
Yeah, but I think the
Yeah.
big difference, if I understand really what you're saying, is I think at last meeting or the meeting before, you asked for a presentation from the DNR about chronic wasting disease.
Right, but they came, and that wasn't what I was looking for.
No, I know that wasn't. But the question I think you're posing is the second, to advance a conversation about whatever was requested versus whatever was actually requested, right? So that a second would mean that the next meeting we would talk about whether we would have a presentation and not have the presentation. And you're looking to make it be,
Two-step.
yeah, a two-step process.
I just wanted to point out, I'm okay with it the way it is, but you're gonna probably get stuff you don't like, and you're not gonna be able to curb it. And I just wanna make sure it's not a double standard. I'm fine with it the way it is. But if you wanna resolve that, I think there does need, just as you described, there needs to be another step. You say that you want this presentation, and then the full board has to decide if they want this
Does
presentation.
the full board want to have a presentation?
And then there has to be a vote on it.
Yeah.
And then some of these things might flesh out, like, how many people, how long, are we gonna take up 2 hours of agenda, we're gonna tell them limit it to 15 minutes?
Yeah, some of the details, I think.
Yeah, from an
Mr. Fritz.
administrative, throw my 2 cents in, from an administrative standpoint, it's very difficult without having those details to go forward, because that leaves the burden on us to figure out, well, when, how, who, how many speakers, all that kind of stuff that we've run into before. And so my preference would be, and I think the least use of staff resources would be for the board to discuss it as a whole and hone down what they actually want, refine it to a point where we can deal with it.
So maybe keep it
Well,
bring it up,
would be
and then
two
it would
brings it up, that it
be,
goes to
then the
the
next meeting,
Yeah.
work out a few more of the details.
Exactly.
Because sometimes there might be, well, in the instance of soil and water, yeah, they all work for us, but they're on a time clock. I
Different,
mean, they're
yeah,
getting paid.
yeah.
So if we ask them to come, we're expending dollars and
Taxpayer
maybe,
dollars.
yeah, maybe some of these other
Yeah, and
groups
it gives us a
might-
chance then in that discussion with the full board to
Figure out who-
say a few things, like if
who,
you
what,
say,
where, when.
oh, we want to have a public hearing, okay, well, are we gonna rent a room, are we gonna,
Right.
is it a small public hearing,
Yep.
what are we doing? So the logistics ends up being important for us.
Yes.
Where you guys, obviously are looking for the policy part of it, so.
Okay, so are we,
So those are the discussions we don't have now
Right.
because
Right.
we don't
Right.
go into the issue.
right,
So
But
Madam
currently now, when something is proposed like this, don't
We
you
just
work
kind of
with
get
the
the general
proposer?
direction.
Don't you work with
Yeah,
the
we
proposer?
call them and say, well, when do
Yeah.
you want it? And then we try to get some general direction, but it's often, you know, it kind of, we're in limbo kind of, trying to work that out.
Commissioner Meyer.
So, packet page 5, modification and scope regarding these policies. Number 1, modifications, additions, deletions can be proposed at any meeting, but they can't be voted on until the next regular meeting.
Right.
And a simple majority is needed to modify.
So put it on for, please, for discussion at our next meeting.
Next
Yeah.
meeting.
To
change
clarify.
the- Well,
Yeah.
to change the rules.
Change
yeah.
the rule and clarify, and to
Clarify
make
the
it easier
rules.
for staff
Yeah.
to know what we're asking
And I'm
for.
generally in support of that. That's, yeah, I don't have an issue with
All
that.
right? Okay, we can't
I-
vote on it.
Yeah, no, we can't change it today. We do have a number of stuff, I can think of at least 2 that I'm sitting here that I asked about. Do you have a list?
Yeah, Heidi's got the kind of the things that we asked
Master
to be on
list
a
of stuff
future-
we've asked for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we want to,
I mean,
do we want to revisit that? And then actually
Well, we probably should.
I can- we-
apply the new rule to
We
it?
can bring the ones that we're aware of.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Should be most of them.
Yeah.
And we can just bring it as part of that discussion.
Okay. Everybody agree? That'll work. Commissioner Jacob?
what do we need to vote on it?
No, we can't vote on it.
Vote on that word.
Well, that
What we're doing.
Well, we've asked to have it put on
It's
the
on our
next,
agenda for today.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
so-
Yeah, you can direct.
Yeah.
So we
okay,
want it
we
on the agenda
that
next
next
time, and we could actually vote on it then.
Sure.
Do you want sample language?
That'd probably be good.
Well, that's maybe some type of format that staff would like.
Yeah.
So that you can,
Oh, well, I was
Determine.
gonna try to clarify from what I understand, so
Yeah.
that would be what you'd be looking
Like
at.
sample
Right,
language?
right.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Okay.
what works.
If it's consensus is fine and administration knows what to do, if we don't need a,
Okay,
Vote
we'll
on it
move
then.
on.
that's okay.
All right.
We don't need to vote today.
No, we won't vote today.
Well, administration's gonna move forward, correct?
Yes.
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 Our policy, yeah, but our policy says we have to vote on it, but we can't vote on it today.
And you're not gonna be here at the next meeting?
Okay, well then let's move it. I
We'll
think
have to have 2
everybody.
meetings from now then? or-
Fine.
Yeah.
Probably wanna hurry it along then.
That's fine
It's
with
of
me.
the utmost time, when we have a full board.
Right.
So
Okay,
if-
so the
Commissioner
meeting
Jacob.
Yeah,
after
that's
that
fine
then.
with me.
Okay, all right. All right, moving on then, 6.5, select 2 commissioners to serve on the election canvass board. Sandra?
Sandra.
Okay.
We should take advantage of this break to stand up and stretch,
Go, feel free to
which
do
we
that.
don't do.
We don't move enough.
Public health.
Well, speaking of public health, what's the word on the coronavirus? This is really, I
The
personal,
flu's worse.
Italy.
the personal observation was my daughter, who is in the dental field, they're actually having trouble ordering masks.
Masks
Yeah,
are,
down
masks are in shortage. You
Yeah,
cannot
and they
get
all,
them.
and so, and,
Yes.
you know, heaven
It's now
forbid,
wintered down into,
Italy.
Italy,
and but after the flu, like, it's worse.
yeah,
Um,
yes,
but yes,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
There's been some publicity on how they shouldn't have kept all those people on that cruise ship.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, I can't
Oh.
imagine being,
Worse, and-
having been on a
And so, yeah,
cruise
it's
ship.
been going on.
That would be
You know,
awful.
I bet you I get you 15 emails a day on the coronavirus, so
Yeah.
if you guys want me to pass them on, I can. But it's just, we are still at low risk of contracting virus.
Right, but we have to be thankful in this country with our economies of scale and everything and our public commitment to public health. We're probably in a much better situation than some of these other countries, as far as how we can handle it and will handle it and.
Yeah, because we're
forward.
more preventative and early interventions where
Right.
everybody else is more reactionary.
Yeah,
Yeah, and part of the problem is having the staff to actually contact the people the person has contacted, has been in contact with. And yeah, that takes a number of man hours, person hours,
Yeah.
yes.
so, anyway, all right, wash your hands.
Yes.
You need me
See,
at all the rest of this meeting?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Sandra, we're at the discussion of selecting 2 commissioners to serve on the election canvass board. What do you need from us? Just 2 willing counters?
Right, for the presidential nomination primary being held on March 3rd, the canvass has been set for Thursday, March 5th at 2 p.m. Required membership includes 2 county commissioners. Because this race is unique, that none of the commissioners are on this ballot. Actually, all five of you are eligible to serve. However, I just think with us probably setting canvas for the next two elections, maybe we want to just choose from the commissioners that aren't up for reelection. But I will take whatever willing parties want to attend.
Do you know the dates for the next two then, or no?
We haven't set those
Okay,
yet,
we don't
but
know
they're
that.
typically scheduled between 2 or 3 days after the election.
Right.
So it will be in August and November, and sorry, I never know my election dates, but
I am not available on the 5th. I'm not in town.
I am available.
I'm available.
All right, I think we have two willing, do we need a motion or just willing
No,
participants?
I always want to talk it over with all of you present, so as long as I
Okay.
have 2 participants, I will send you
Thank you.
a request or a reminder and let you know what room we're meeting in. And
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. 6.6, acknowledge completion of the county administrator's performance review on 101. And the annual performance review was conducted of the county administrator and per employment agreement pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3A. The findings of the review indicate performance meets or exceeds expectations. And I just want to, yes, Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I'd just say 2019 really was a big year. A lot of work had to be done. This move over from the government center to the county office building, relocating the license center, the jail project. I want to thank the administrator for his work on multiple fronts and really keeping the county board. I think he makes us look good all the time. Transparency is great. And as you noted, he, on all, everything reviewed in the performance review, he either met or exceeded all the evaluations measured. And so with that, I would move to acknowledge the administrator performance review.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Olson to acknowledge the administrator's performance review. Discussion?
I
Yes, ma'am.
did just want to say that the city helped us this year.
Yes.
And I thought they did a great job. I was delighted with the organization of it, and so I'm grateful to them.
I would agree, and I do want to say thank you to Mr. Fritz. He does keep us on a very even keel, and he's got good work performance. And things have been, a lot of work has been done, and it's been good. So thank you very much. And that is recognized. All right, all those in favor of the motion to accept, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Accepted. 6.7, approval resolution to support One Watershed, One Plan application for the Mississippi River, Winona, and La Crescent watersheds. Sheila is here. Now, we tabled this from our last meeting, and we may be tabling it again. I'll just start off. We had some discussion yesterday at the Root River One Watershed, One Plan, and Karen Sonneman was in attendance. And Wayne, we're going to get to your thing in just a minute if you got a few more minutes. I know it's priority for you. Okay. But the discussion came from Olmsted County, which is in the Root River and would be in this new one. And part of the discussion, from my take on it, is that we felt that maybe we need a meeting of all the areas that are included in this new one to really know how it could or should or may work. The Whitewater, which has been a very active, has gotten millions of dollars over the years to improve the Whitewater, is included in this area. Can that be expanded to cover the whole area? The governance model, the administrative model. So I left that meeting thinking that maybe we needed a meeting of all the involved, which is Olmsted, Houston, Wabasha, Winona. Are those the entities? And the Watershed District, to kind of have some discussion before we agree to signing on, because agreeing to sign on, in my opinion, again, starts the ball rolling of spending between $200,000 and $250,000 of taxpayer money to come up with a plan. And I think it's putting us in a situation that I would like a little more agreement before we start, asking for those kind of dollars and making a plan.
Well, good morning,
Sheila.
Madam Chair and Commissioners. The resolution that's on the agenda is not, is basically a resolution to support an application for One Watershed, One Plan. So the next step would be, assuming that we submit a joint application and it was approved or selected. From what I understand, there are 12 watersheds that are considering doing applications. Bowser will select 6. So just because we throw our hat in the ring doesn't mean that we're already moving forward. So I think at the time that assuming we do get selected for the Mississippi River, La Crescent, One Watershed, One Plan area, then we be stepping forward and doing a memorandum of agreement between all those entities. So yes, we are having a discussion. Adam Bielke sent me an email this morning, as well as to the others involved in this planning area, saying that Bowser will assist in that meeting process of trying to have that discussion and trying to see how everybody fits together and how it all plays out. So yeah, the recommendations by Commissioner Flynn made yesterday were listened to, and Bowser is actually helping, trying to facilitate that and trying to organize that.
Madam Chair? Yeah, Commissioner Meyer.
So this resolution has come in front of a number of other bodies. Who are they, and what is the status of all of them at this point?
Okay, Winona County SWCD approved at their last meeting. And with Wabasha County, they will be considering, their SWCD will be considering it at their meeting this Thursday. And there are plans to put it on the agenda for the Wabasha County Board of Commissioners. Houston County and Root River SWCD already did theirs. Houston County approved it on November 22nd, 2016. The Root River SWCD.
I'm sorry, 2016?
16. That's when they wanted to.
They're
do it,
anxious.
and it's still we had talked about doing One Watershed, One Plan in the past. And for various reasons.
That's why Commissioner Johnson didn't remember approving it.
That's correct.
Yeah, because he vowed he hadn't.
And neither did Commissioner Flynn from Olmsted.
Right, and you said Olmsted, yeah, and Commissioner
Theirs
Flynn.
was April 3rd, 2018.
Okay.
And their resolution actually states the Zumbro watershed planning area and the Mississippi River Winona watershed. So they had their 2 resolutions in one.
Okay.
And so that's how they did it.
But memories fade, obviously.
Correct. And Olmsted SWCD has it on their agenda for this Thursday.
And so my second question then to Commissioner Ward's concerns, the conversations about all of the organizational stuff that will happen. So is there any advantage to tabling?
Well, the thought with Commissioner Flynn from Olmsted County and everything, and I know Commissioner Jacob sits on the Whitewater. There's a big concern, what happens to the Whitewater project? And that is a defined.
Joint Powers Board.
Right, it is a joint powers board, and so when we did One Watershed, One Plan, Root River, we did a joint powers collaboration. So there's concerns there. And again, once you start, in my personal opinion, once you start applying for these things, you're gonna get $200,000. You're gonna say, no, I don't want that. And are you jeopardizing somebody else? So Commissioner Flynn was pretty adamant, and then Commissioner Johnson from Houston County saying, let's have a conversation first before we, and we don't need to delay it long. If Bowser is, here we got another state organization that has control and power over the money. It's similar to the Department of Corrections, but they don't give you much guidance. And we are having at the AMC conference tomorrow afternoon, there is a workshop or a breakout session about one watershed, one plan. And I know some of us plan to attend it. How have others organized? Is it what's working, what's not working? There's a little, we had to clarify some of the roles, how the bills are getting paid. There's a lot of money and we have to be responsible to the taxpayers.
But there's plenty of time to do that, because that is a separate process from the resolution.
But I think what's the deadline for these resolutions or these applications? We have some time there too, correct?
June.
Sheila? June?
Yes, the application RFP comes out end of March, and we've got till June to submit it. And so then, if selected, then the planning process will start early 2020.
Right.
So-
Madam Chair and
Yes.
Commissioners, oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Just one quick point. Because this is the last piece of the Southeast Minnesota One Watershed, One Planning process, and watersheds with approved plans then move into implementation funding opportunities. Each year that we delay that, if that pool of money is not expanded upon in future, it's one less year of implementation grant funding. As the planning director, I want to state that at no time during the preparation of a plan, because I wasn't here during the RUT, would the process of public participation by commissioners, by SWCDs, by the public and those affected, not be part of a plan and a planning document. Bowser may have guidelines, but all of us now with the experience of the RUT, whether there's a consultancy involved or not, true authentic participation should take place during this, and that includes the governance and the lessons that have been learned from the RUT and the excellent work done by the Whitewater. But I'm just concerned about the implementation timetable at the end, and that was why we stated that in the request for board action. Thank you.
Well, and the being cognizant of taxpayer money. So there are 60-some groups?
63.
60, so take 60 times $250,000. Think of the money that has been spent on, quote, plans, which are important, but think how many grass waterways or buffers or things we could have done. I mean, that's a lot of taxpayer dollars going into planning. And it behooves me that we have to spend that kind of money again. We've had active soil and water districts, we've had active the Whitewater, and here again, we hire a consultant and we spend $200,000 to come up with another plan. It's a lot of money to ask taxpayers to keep paying. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I certainly share all those frustrations, and we could get into that at the figures, I think 17 million.
Yeah.
That's not going on the ground, and alls we're doing is using different boundaries. We don't have any new practices. We're still using the same practices. So a lot of frustrations there, but I don't think that's really what's before us today. What's before us today is whether we want to move forward with an application for the Winona, La Crescent Watershed 1-1 plan. So for me, I can support it, but I can't support the new 1-1 plan overlaying the Whitewater Joint Powers and having two entities functioning side by side competing for the same grant. So I'm really with Commissioner Kavesi on this, with her statement at the last meeting that she wouldn't support, both the Whitewater Joint Powers Board and the One Watershed, One Plan. Start looking at dues. We pay Whitewater Joint Powers dues, and then they're just going to only take more taxpayers' dollars to compete for other money. It's not streamlining. It's the opposite of streamlining. So, dues, per diems, mileage, all these things are, they're all real expenses to taxpayers. So, I would just say that I would support this moving forward if the plan is to, within a year after it exists, to withdraw our membership from the Whitewater Joint Powers. And
I don't disagree with you, but that was kind of an issue yesterday at the meeting. Is that entity going to go away, or is it going, and nobody's in agreement? So
we have
the discussion.
We have every authority to not participate in it.
True.
I mean, we're not bound by them to have to do what they tell us to do. So if they want to continue to exist with the biggest chunk of their land mass not participating, I think, that'll be tough for them.
Is the Whitewaters a taxing authority?
Yes. Whitewater Stream Powers
In
Board, right?
Waukesha County, it's taxing,
Yeah,
but
But
not
not
for
when-
Olmsted and Winona.
I see.
I,
Attorney, let's get an
Okay.
attorney opinion. You got an opinion? Of course you do.
Don't I always? Okay.
You should.
Yeah, well, and as I mentioned yesterday in the presentation I made at the Root River One Watershed, One Plan, many of us, myself, Sheila, Jen Wolf from MCIT, Bree Mackey, who's formerly with Soil and Water here in Winona County, we all worked together to put together the memorandum of understanding, or the memorandum of agreement, and then the joint powers agreement that created the collaborative. And I felt, and you and I had a conversation, Commissioner Ward, that what we did then, I think, would be better spent up front before this board or any other board decides to jump into the Winona Crescent watershed. I mean, it's kind of like doing your pre-planning, sort of, on a much lesser scale. I mean, and I think Bowser kind of got the message, sounds like they did, because there was that concern among the commissioners represented of this, what would be the last watershed, one plan, one watershed in southeastern Minnesota, that they really didn't know what they were voting on before, that they really would like the opportunity, to sit down and talk, and then hash out really, okay, what's going to happen to Whitewater Joint Powers Board, which is a joint powers entity, and yes, has its own authority and everything else, but also its own headaches. So,
May I ask?
Yes, yes.
I know that Ms. Kavesi is in order before me, but the question is, do you see an advantage then to trying to do that prior to passing this resolution and making the application?
well, I'm looking at the language of the resolution, and it says that you would agree to collaborate with the counties, the soil and water districts, the watershed district, and that you support an application. I think if you change the language to say that you would agree or would support meeting with the counties, this does require planning, but it requires that advanced planning to me, because there is a lot of concern about, Bowser, just kind of set up these pilot programs and said, do this, and we responded, and we put together, I think, a really good one watershed, one plan that was a pilot and has been a model for the state. But I'm the way I operate a lot of times, and we do this in CJCC, we create work groups to look at something and we say, okay, let's study this. So if we study among the counties that would be the members, so kind of hash out those details, then people aren't as upset, like, well, I didn't know what I was voting on 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And rather iron out those details and then put together, that memorandum.
So your recommendation would be to slightly modify the language in this resolution to allow for that, or
that pre-planning.
that pre-planning process?
Yeah, that meeting of representatives, of those bodies.
Commissioner Kavesi, and then.
yeah, I agree with the discussion so far. I've forgotten my point.
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, that's okay. It had to do with the two power boards. Actually, in Commissioner Jacobs' statements, he was saying within the next year, we would withdraw from one of those power boards.
Within 1 year after it's established. So if
Okay.
it takes 2 years to get it established, I would say, I would like to see both boards functioning until, okay, now we have the new plan up and running.
Okay, I'd be uncomfortable saying now what we would do in 2 or 3 years, but I agree that we would always have a discussion on those kind of issues. When we withdrew from the Southeast Minnesota Resource Board, we had that discussion. So, that's my comment right now. But right now, we are discussing whether we would do another planning step and then submit our application in June. Is that what the concern is? Or go ahead and submit our application today and then have that discussion?
No, I think have the discussion before and then decide, okay, do we want to do this?
Okay, but the other
And
board
do this
county,
is the resolution, or do this is
do the
Send the
watershed,
application in.
you know.
Okay.
Apply for an
Right.
application.
Okay.
But
and-
the other
and how to
boards,
organize it, I'm sorry to.
No.
But because this is a unique situation with the Whitewater being the primary,
In
you know,
our-
that, it takes
right.
up the most
yes.
acreage of this area. And as was discussed yesterday, it's been in existence for what, 31 years? 31 years. So, you know, also out of respect to that organization, rather than just kind of, I'll just say it, cramming this down people's throats, have that meeting of the principals, of the representatives of the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, of, you know, each of the counties and soil and water conservation districts. It's, again, it's like having a pre-planning meeting, but I think this resolution could be modified to say, if you do want to do that, to have a meeting of all of the principals to discuss, okay, if we're going to do this, how is it going to look? What are we going to do with Whitewater? I mean, Commissioner Flynn was talking about, well, maybe Whitewater would attach itself to all the others
Right.
and become, you know, but then you have to look at the question of, do you want to be a joint powers entity? So,
Well, it's a board,
So-
Joint Powers Board.
no, but I mean, if you attach everybody else to
Right.
Whitewater to create this now La Crescent, Winona.
But I
So
think,
you know,
Commissioner
how do you
Jacob
operate?
had it.
please go ahead.
Well, so I don't disagree that there's 30-some years, and if I had my choice, we'd be moving forward with Whitewater Joint Powers and Winona County having its own water plant, just like we had in the past. But where I'm coming from is that to have two parallel watershed groups, one operating within the other, it's the opposite of streamlining. It's just adding more confusion to the process. And Houston County is part of this, and they have really as much of a right to be at the table as what Olmsted and Winona and Wabasha have, even though they're a small part of it. And it just seems much more clean to move forward as that group, let's all get our representation, let's do what we did in Root River, than to say, we've already got this other group, and they're gonna kind of be the pass-through group to tell what happens in these other areas. And then, with respect to how you stated we could modify the resolution, what was the word you said to replace?
Is that first be it further, say the,
On which number?
it's the first be it further, it's on page 103 of the packet,
Well, that's not where I'm at.
Collaborate.
Page 103?
page 103. Resolution be it, you know, that,
Collaborate?
Yeah, that one, you're the looker. Yeah, that's the one.
I mean, I think the now therefore agreeing to participate in watershed planning efforts.
I think we delete the bottom. At this point, we're not sure we want to make an application.
Well,
That's what this,
Right.
I feel like that changes it to we're not really making an application.
at this point,
We
we
have to,
haven't
if we're
decided.
agreeing to collaborate, then we're moving forward with the application. If we're only agreeing to discuss, I don't think Sheila's getting what she's after, which is to move this application forward. I think that changes the intent of the resolution enough.
But I think Bowser came to the you know, the epiphany that, hey, we're not all,
Right.
we're not all
On
in
the
this
same page.
together. We're not, right, we don't all agree how this is gonna run and operate. So they're agreeing to conduct a meeting, help facilitate a meeting.
I guess I want to understand what Sheila's asking, because I feel like the modification that the attorney is talking about here.
And I'm just throwing that out,
Okay.
Commissioner Jacob. It's trying to get to the idea that this is premature, given the discussion yesterday.
Yes.
Among all of the principals who were there. I mean, Olmsted, Wabasha, no, Wabasha
No,
wasn't.
no,
But
Wabasha wasn't.
Houston, everybody
Houston.
else was there, and there was obviously some concern about kind of being rushed into this.
And, yeah,
Okay, but the other groups have already approved
No.
this application.
Well,
half of them.
if they did it back in 2016, they didn't
Right.
really
Are
understand.
they going to go back and review it
Well,
now at
that's-
this point?
Sounds like
That's-
Olmsted is.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so-
And I'm sure Houston will too once, and it's a new commissioner that's in that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. so
I
he's gotta learn.
understand. So we do have language in the be it further resolved that we will collaborate on this effort. So what we're saying is we will collaborate before we approve it and then collaborate again after we approve it.
Can we just take that last be further? Because that's saying you're going ahead with the application and
application,
everything. This,
This is a resolution for an application.
Yes.
Right.
If we
Right, to
approve it-
submit, to
if we
submit
approve
an
it, we're-
application.
Yeah, we're.
Yeah.
we're
But if you
moving
take
toward the
that last paragraph off, that doesn't say we're going for an application. It just says we're collaborating.
Then I don't
I
think
would like
we're.
to go
Says
for the
we
application, though.
It says we
some
support
point
an
in time.
application and that we will collaborate on this effort pending selection as a recipient of a planning grant.
But
But
then
that's
she's not moving
collaboration
forward with
after the approval. What we're discussing now is
We really-
collaboration before the approval.
Right.
Yes, okay, I want to
We're
get
not
it
all
straight.
on board of being together.
Well, we
how
want
we're
to
gonna be
understand the
together.
process and what we're approving.
Right.
So we don't want to go in 2 years to a meeting and say, I don't remember discussing that,
Right.
you know.
Well, and
Yeah.
so unfortunately, other counties, some of these resolutions were in, consent business, and you know how that,
That's
sometimes it
their
doesn't,
business, yeah.
sometimes it doesn't get pulled.
Yeah,
So either table the whole thing, have Ms. Harms work with Bowser to facilitate a meeting of all interested parties and bring it
Who
back.
would be the representatives from this board at that meeting?
Well, I definitely would like to be because I've been on the One Watershed, One Plan.
Whitewater is my, I mean,
Right.
that's
But
my.
because this
Yeah.
involves the city of
That would
Winona, I
make
think that,
Well, that's a good
a
question too,
commissioner
though.
from,
Where does
the
the
city
city of,
needs-
where does the authority within the city of Winona fall?
And that is interesting too, because in
It's-
Zumbro watershed, the city of Rochester opted to be a part of it, and they're on the policy committee for the Zumbro. And the Steele County, because the watershed boundary was in a minimal area, they decided not to be on the policy committee, but to be on the advisory committee. So, yeah, there's some interesting dynamics on how each of these watersheds play out and how they choose to participate.
And at this point in time, I don't know that we've heard from the city of Winona of their interest, correct? I mean, I haven't heard from anybody from the city of Winona.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
And county commissioners. So what I'm hearing is that we're now doing ad hoc planning prior to planning. And I'm concerned about that because we're asking a planning staff member to pull something together. We haven't decided exactly who the players are. And I feel like this is part of the planning process and with the planning grant. We are not abrogating control of what happens with the planning grant. We would be working with all of the partners. And if we are taking the lessons learned that County Attorney Sonneman has shared to be part of the planning that takes place, the structure and what order of things should take place, I think is something that is clearly on the minds of commissioners in other counties as well as the WCD. So I would, I guess, respectfully like to ask for the opportunity to move forward with the planning grant application. There's no means of assuring that we would receive it. It's a couple-year-long process, and I feel like we could then help provide some structure after gathering additional input from what the commissioners would like to see. Thank you.
okay, I will totally disagree with those statements because from yesterday's meeting, it's unfortunate that the local electeds, we are the body that spend the taxpayer dollars. Staff does not, they spend them, but they're not accountable to them. And so the local electeds are not on the same page at this point in time because of how these things and the Whitewater fits into there. So I really advocate for this pre-meeting through Bowser. Commissioner Jacob and then Commissioner Jacob.
And so coincidentally, we did just extend our water plan to, I mean, we're not in a bind. We've got a water plan that goes to what, 2025 or?
2023, and then, but the one entity that would be in a bind, if you want to use that word, would be Wabasha County. Their plan, right, they are due to do a 5-year update in 2020. So if this doesn't get moved forward, then they would have to do that update to their water plan. But Olmsted County, their county water plan for the portion of the Whitewater that's in their county goes till 2022. Houston County, same thing, 2022, and then we're at, so we're all sitting pretty good, except for Wabasha County has to do an update if they don't do this.
but
So-
those are single county plans, not the
Yes.
joint planning.
Right, those for,
But
because
that covers us until
2023.
And
Covers our portion of the
Right.
whitewater.
And I'm sorry, the
Yeah.
world isn't gonna end because you can just say you extend the water plan. The water won't stop flowing. We'll have water.
Yeah.
And we'll be okay. But I wanted to pull up the map. Wabasha is a very, I don't know if I can get it quick. All right, so desires of the board.
Madam Chair, could I?
Yeah,
just
oh, I'm sorry,
speak
yes.
Again, sorry,
Attorney Son.
'cause, Ms. Qualley, who I respect greatly, spoke up about, and maybe I'm not making myself clear as to what I'm proposing. It's not sitting down and planning how this is going to operate if it is actually put together, if all the counties, decide to join together and do this like they did in the Root River. It's really just a very preliminary meeting, because I saw, as Commissioner Ward did yesterday, and I think Sheila, Ms. Harms did as well, that there was a lot of kind of concern, maybe mild consternation of what are the electeds, as Commissioner Ward mentioned, the county commissioners that were there, the SWCD supervisors that were there. I think they wanted to have a chance to talk to each other in a more informal way, and not what we did with the Root River, which is that put together to do this planning grant, or after the grant was obtained, and then we had to, kind of race to get a memorandum of agreement together, and it was a long process, and learning those lessons, I think, would be very helpful to apply to this. And again, Bowser kind of saw that, so.
Yeah, I think we want to be in unison, and right now we're not in unison.
Right, yeah,
Because we
there was a
haven't
lot of
had those,
questions yesterday.
we haven't had
do,
those
and
conversations.
Bowser's having RFPs every year. So it's not like if we don't do it now, there's next year there's an application
Right.
process.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
But it is true that legacy money is not, it has an end date. And if we do not make this grant application round by June, that there's a potentially $1 million, $1.7 million?
Well, now you're referring to the route, and that is a lot
That's
larger
bigger,
than
yeah.
Okay.
the Mississippi Winona. The amounts of implementation funding that is available for each watershed is based on a formula based on the number of private acres in the watershed. Now, the Mississippi River, Winona, and La Crescent is a lot smaller than the route. We have a lot of public lands, so that portion, so that's what's in the equation.
So what are we
The number
talking?
of street miles, and was there anything else, Daryl? What else did they consider? That was it, okay.
So it's about, what are we, 250,000 minimum, potentially more, okay. And so,
But the Whitewater already, you just applied for something again, right? Correct?
Attorney Sonneman, could you provide that language today, or do you need
For the resolution?
to change the resolution to say there'd be a planning meeting? That we approve the resolution with the idea that there will be this planning meeting before the application is made?
Right. I would
I can try.
like to say, I would
could
like
do
to
that?
meet,
Okay.
I would like to meet this deadline of June 1st.
I tend to,
Bring it next meeting too. I mean,
Oh.
we've got a little time. We got a little bit of time.
The next meeting
A
is March
meeting
10th, right?
of all the
March 10th,
counties
yes.
is.
yeah.
Yes.
I know that you do have concerns about multiple levels of governance, and I also know that you, both Commissioners Ward and Jacob, have concerns about planning prior to implementation because the planning takes too much money and that's a waste of money. And frankly, I think the planning makes it targeted. And the importance, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so making changes willy-nilly without actually being able to target them in a way that is the most effective actually is a bigger waste of money than doing the planning in advance. It has to be measurable, and so that you can actually say when the issue is resolved, hey, it was resolved. So those arguments haven't convinced me as of yet.
Well, and it is amazing that this
pardon
is
me.
one water, the lay
Pardon
of the
me.
land is
Madam Chair?
drastically different.
Madam Chair, could I finish,
Yes.
please? Thank you. So I haven't been convinced by those arguments. I feel like the loss of the money, it's going to be spent somewhere. I just assume that it be helping our water here. So I would